Got it?
Yep, it's going.
Okay. If the camera's off, blame Mr. Mitzel.
False.
Yeah, it's his fault, not mine. But as I was saying, the final review guide is on SharePoint. It looks like this, so there's more space for you to write. It's probably about 8 pages. At the end, there's kind of an overview page that's bold that talks about the format of the test. The test is going to be 200 questions. Most of the questions are multiple choice. I would probably say about 150 are multiple choice. Then you're going to get a section of like 20 that'll give you a statement, and you have to match the statement to the social theory that it best matches. So symbolic interaction, conflict theory, or functionalism. Then there's a section that has 10 like movie lines or quotes, or like historical quotes or something from a book or something, or a song lyric, and you have to tell me whether that matches SI theory, conflict theory, or functionalism. Okay? So it's basically the same thing, it's just like a real world quote or a real lyric to a song, right? So you have that, then there's some matching, not that many, like maybe about 20 matching, okay? And the matchings will be a little bit of everything. There's not a set chapter that any section covers. I tried to keep it equal roughly for every chapter, other than obviously the quotes for the movies or song lyrics. That's basically all from chapter 1. So if you wanted to pick one thing that you want to know inside and out that you're going to be assessed on the most, is understand the 3 theories and can you apply those also. So in general, the test has a number of questions that are definition, also a number of questions that ask you to apply something. So instead of just saying, what is a status, it would give you a scenario, and you would have to tell me what status that person holds, right? Or what their master status is, or something like that. So again, there's a little bit of everything on the test. Most of the test, like I said, is multiple choice in groups of 4. So, and like I said also, if you want to print off the study guide, that's extra credit. You have 3 options to get extra credit. You can come to the review session, which only applies to 5 people today, but that's okay. So you guys don't have to do anything else. You can complete this review guide and comment on the video, or you can watch all the videos and do a transcript of the videos. Yep?
Should we do all 3?
You're not going to get more bonus points, but if you want to, you can. Yeah. So if you show up doing all 3, you don't get more bonus points.
So how many bonus points do we get?
I haven't decided yet. I'm probably going to go 10 points because that's 5 percentage points. So the test is 200 questions. I'll go 10 bonus points.
If you want, you can just exempt the people here.
That's a great idea.
No. Yeah.
Like, or just kidding, if you got an A,
Right.
you're exempt.
Yeah.
That'd be really nice. Hint.
$20 for everybody that came to the review session.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'd be okay with that too, actually.
Not really.
I got college to go to next year.
Right. I'm still paying off college, so I definitely understand. But, okay, so I'm just going to go through questions. I'm not going to read off the question directly. I'm just going to see a concept and try to explain it. So let's start. Number 1. One of the earliest sociologists, Durkheim, was studying suicide rates. What was the key variable that he found in terms of suicide rates?
Social connection.
Yeah, the more socially connected you are, the less likely you were to commit suicide. So he found that, let's say, men and women, who was more likely?
Men.
Men, less socially connected. Okay? Protestants or Catholics?
Protestants.
Protestants. Good. Who was the guy that made up that used the term sociology first? Okay, it was Auguste Comte, or Comte. And then you have, let's just talk about some of the other major theories and who the key people are, okay? For functionalism, who is one of the main guys with functionalism?
Is it Durkheim?
Durkheim was a functionalist guy, that's true. Mertens, Parsons, and then Weber. Weber with a W, right? Those are kind of the main functionalist guys. Who is the main conflict theorist? There's one clear person. Karl Marx, okay? What was the book that he wrote called?
Manifesto.
Communist Manifesto. Yep. So Marx was the first conflict theorist, wrote a book called the Communist Manifesto, which became the basis of conflict theory in sociology and communism in political and economic theory. Okay? Let's see. Who is the main guy for SI theory? He talked about the concept of the I and the me.
Oh, Sigmund
Freud.
Freud.
No, Freud is psychoanalysis, that's psychology.
What did he do again?
Well, his concept he called the I and the me. It's George Herbert Mead is that guy's name.
Oh yeah.
George Herbert what?
Mead, M-E-A-D. Okay, now we talked about this kind of all year, so let's talk about these concepts again. There's probably about 8 questions, roughly, related to these concepts. Manifest and latent function, right? So let's start with education. We just finished that with the last chapter. You had an essay question on it if you were in period 7, I believe. So what are some of the manifest functions of education?
Preparing students for college life and academic success.
Okay, so teaching them, preparing them for success in a later endeavor, whether it's college or career, socialization. Those are some of the intended consequences, right? What are some of the unintended or latent functions of education?
Negative influence, such as drugs or something like that. Hang around people that do that.
Okay, so if you're like living a sheltered life and you don't know anybody that swears or does anything, like find the most pure, cleanest, like wholesome grandma that you can find. Like she sees a TV show and it's just horrible because it has they say hell once. She just freaks out, right? So find that person and then have them raise a kid and then send that kid to school here. That kid's going to be freaking out, right? Walking around in the halls, listening to what people are talking about at lunch. So you get exposed to a lot of things that they wouldn't normally. Okay, what are some other latent functions?
Pregnancy.
Well,
Yeah, in school.
pregnancy. You could say matchmaker. You meet your friends here. You meet your boyfriends, girlfriends here. Good.
Which could lead to pregnancy.
Which, yes, could lead to pregnancy. Yep.
Boyfriend's girlfriend.
Okay, let's see. So what's the main difference between a manifest and latent function then?
One's intended, manifest is intended, latent is not.
Okay, are latent functions always bad?
Nope.
No, so take college. One of the main latent functions of college is proving to be a social matchmaker, matching you up with people that you're going to marry. That, in most instances, is a good function. Okay, what's the definition for conflict theory?
When one group uses their power to keep a different group like under themselves, so in an inferior position.
Yeah, it's a theoretical analysis that builds theory by looking at social structures. It's macro level, right? And how people use those social structures to take advantage of other people, and then how that frustration that gets produced by the oppressed people leads to social change. So conflict theory is one of the macro level analysis, or analyses, whatever the correct verbiage would be. What's the other macro theory? Functionalism is the other macro theory. Out of those two, which one generally has a more positive outlook on the way society exists? Functionalism. What's the main micro level analysis?
SI.
Symbolic interactionism. There's another micro level analysis that's also fairly popular called social exchange theory. What is that at root? What does it talk about basically?
It says that every time like you have an interaction with someone, you have like a little counter in your head that says if it was positive or negative, and if it was positive, you're going to want to interact with that or do that situation more often, and if it was negative, then you're going to subconsciously try and avoid that situation.
Yeah, so subconsciously you don't literally have like a +2, +3 thing going on in your head, but you assign values, positive and negative, to social situations, and then if I'm interacting with somebody and I perceive them to be a benefit to me, then I'm going to view that as a positive. If I perceive them to be an annoyance or a detriment, I'm going to perceive that as a negative, and then my behavior over time is going to go with the things that I believe are positive. Now, here's one way that you can tell that exchange theory is more of a micro-level analysis, and also how it's tied to SI theory. It has similar roots. Like, for me, playing basketball is not enjoyable at all. I'm not good at it, right? It's frustrating because you can't like push people around as much as I would like, okay? So I would get frustrated, it'd be a negative to me. Maybe Jennifer really likes it, so I'm playing basketball, and to me it's a -3, and to her it's a +4. Does that make sense? So the perceptions get involved in how somebody's going to attribute whether something's positive or negative. Okay, give me an example of something you could study that would be like a macro level analysis.
Ethnomethodology?
No, not necessarily. Like, give me a situation
Oh,
with some social institutions. What would be a situation?
like studying like McDonald's effect on society.
Yeah, you could look at the organization of McDonald's and how that is tied to obesity rates in the United States, let's say. Okay? You're looking at a big company and how that influences society as a whole. Give me an example of a study or something you could look at that would be more of a micro-level focus.
What Jennifer thinks of teen pregnancy.
Okay, yeah, or how she relates to somebody that's pregnant.
Yeah.
That would be a good example. Good. Okay, what is one of the main criticisms of functionalism?
It focuses too much on the positive aspects of social organizations.
Right, it exactly. It doesn't focus enough on how social organizations can be used to keep people away from having opportunities. And then another obvious focus would be it doesn't look at how individual interactions play a role. So then, on the flip side, if functionalist is criticized for not looking at micro level enough, then SI theorists would be criticized for doing what?
Not looking at the bigger picture.
Not looking at the big social institutions. Exactly. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples. I want you to tell me what these are elements of, okay? Symbols, language, and values.
W. Thomas theorem?
No, not necessarily.
What
You're
if-
thinking too specifically. Symbols, language, and values are all examples of something that make up what?
Culture?
Make up culture, exactly. So, what is culture then?
It's
Culture is the way of life of people in an area that includes beliefs, values, language, symbols. So it's composed of material and non-material culture, right?
mm-hmm.
So if you go into like some subcultures, walk into GNC. In GNC they have a bunch of these, and then they have a bunch of like big things full of protein that say like get ripped, 36% more muscle gain. And it's got all these pictures of people walking around looking huge and stuff, right? And then if you were to walk into, I don't know, what's the anti-GNC? Cold Stone?
Yeah.
I don't know.
McDonald's.
McDonald's, maybe. They don't focus, you don't have pictures of people walking around like, get ripped, or, you know, although that'd be kind of unique. Yeah,
Get big.
yeah, get big. Yeah.
Big with the big neck.
Right.
Good
Nice.
slogan.
Okay,
Market it.
so if culture is the way of life of people in an area, what's the difference between that and society?
Society can have many cultures.
True.
Isn't that more like how people interact?
Well, society has a defined area, right?
Yeah.
So U.S. society, Canadian society, right? Okay. I'm really into mixed martial arts, right? I haven't ever done it, like trained in it, but I watch a lot of it, so I know what a lot of the moves are called. What theory would say that I can think more deeply about it and I understand it better because I know the names of all the moves and the fighters more so than Kaylee does?
The Sapir-Whorf thing?
Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Yep, good. Okay, let's say that Elijah gets a text from his girlfriend, and he interprets that text as being like she's mad at him. So then he goes and talks to her, thinking that she's mad at him, and then says a bunch of stuff, and then, in fact, what he says makes her then mad at him, even though she wasn't really mad at him in the first place.
Still a lot of drama.
Right, a lot of drama. So, what theorem would help us to understand that?
W.I. Thomas.
W.I. Thomas, yeah, because it says, what's perceived as real is real in its consequences. So if Jennifer walks into class the first day, let's say that I'm like the best teacher in the history of existence, but there was one student that just didn't like me for whatever reason. So that one student was also Jennifer's best friend, right? So she walks into class, and I'm totally making this up on the fly, okay? I'm not referring to any specific people. But let's say that Jennifer then comes into class knowing nothing about me, but she had heard from her friend that I totally suck, right? So that belief is forming a presupposition that leads to her thinking that I suck, when in fact many other people think that I'm also a good teacher. Make sense? Okay. Let's see. What are rules and expectations by which a society guides the behavior of its members?
Norms.
Norms. Give me 2 examples of types of norms.
Folkways and mores.
Folkways and mores. Okay, what's the difference?
Mores are usually incorporated in the law and have larger consequences.
And then folkways?
Oh, those are like more day-to-day routines that have small consequences and are not incorporated in the laws.
Right. So let's say, for example, that, I don't know, Mitzel decides that he just wants to sit here. You guys wouldn't be able to see it, and he's not really going to do this, but Mitzel's like, you know what, I'm going to sit in this review session naked, right?
Oh my god.
He's violating a more, right? If Mitzel decided that he wanted to face backwards during this review session, just face the wall and not look at us, that'd be more of a folkway, right? Still weird, people would still wonder what he's doing, but he's not going to get arrested for doing that. Okay? Let's see.
Oh my gosh. Awkward.
I don't even want to know what he said. Okay. Goth kids today, Christians in the 1st century Rome, early followers of Islam, and African American movements for civil rights all represent what?
Subcultures.
Subcultures is true, but a little more specific than that.
Small subcultures.
Well, countercultures.
Oh.
They're trying to go against what is popular at the time. Okay, let's say that Elijah goes over to, I don't know, trying to pick something that's totally different. Let's say he goes to India, and he's in this village where, actually this is a true story, they have this village, I think it's called Nag Panchami, they have this cobra festival, they usually show a video in geography about it, and they like walk around carrying cobras, like imagine the mall the day after Thanksgiving, right? Just everybody's crazy. Now give like half the people in their cobras, like poisonous cobras, and they're dancing and singing. And that's what this festival looks like, okay? He's sitting there and he's thinking, these people are crazy, I couldn't possibly do that. Everybody else is just running around having a good time. What is he experiencing?
Culture shock.
Culture shock, exactly. Okay? Let's see.
You want to take mine for me?
Is the development of technology within a culture and society, is it always positive, always negative, a little bit of both? What do you think?
Both.
Okay, so give an example of a type of technology and explain why.
like, and what effect it has in society?
Yeah, how it could be good or bad.
Okay, well, like, internet, it has, like, the capability for, like, research and stuff, but then it also has the capability for, like, freaks, like, pedophiles to communicate with each other.
Okay, exactly. So internet you can use to research for a paper, to talk to friends on Facebook you haven't talked to for a while, but you could also use it to hack into somebody's account. You could use it to be a perv in a variety of ways. You could use it to rob banks, a variety of things. Okay, let's see. Okay, way back in the day when the automobile was first developed, and they didn't have any street signs or laws about how to like operate them. And then over time, some of the laws started to come in, but they came at a pace that probably was too slow for that technology. What's that called?
Cultural lag.
Cultural lag. Yep. So that's when the material culture changes faster than the non-material culture. Another example of that, the one that I probably mentioned the most in class, was laws about sexting. So you have laws, the only laws they really have on the book in many states to deal with sexting are the same laws that they have that deal with distribution of pornography or distribution of child pornography. So if, let's say, Jennifer's boyfriend and her get in a fight, and then he sends some pictures around, then I don't know where North Dakota's at in terms of the law, but I know recently at least, the only way they could go after him was for distributing pornography. Okay? Alright, what is the spread of cultural traits from one society to another? Cultural...
What did you say?
Nope. Spread of culture from one society to another.
Cultural transmission?
No.
Is it transmission or something?
No. It starts with a D.
Diffusion?
Diffusion. Cultural diffusion. Good. Okay, if you try to judge a culture by your own culture's standards, what is that called?
What is that? Somebody did a wiki
Starts with an E.
Oh,
What was the question?
Judging a culture by your own culture standards. That's called ethnocentric.
I did that.
Ethnocentric. Now, if you judge a culture by its own standards, what's that called?
Cultural pluralism?
No, cultural, starts with the R.
Relatives.
Relativism. Good. Okay. What is the lifelong learning experiences by which people develop their potential and learn culture?
Socialization?
Socialization. Good. Okay, who was the theorist that came up with the idea of the id, ego, and superego?
That was, yes.
That was Freud. Okay. So to him, which one of those would be the selfish part that desires what it wants right now? Okay, good. What's the debate in psychology, sociology, and other social sciences that tries to determine whether something is like innate within an individual or if it's taught to them?
Nature versus nurture?
Nature versus nurture. So which one represents innate?
Nature.
Nature is innate or biology, and then which one represents learning?
Nurture.
Nurture. The vast majority of things are they a combination of nature and nurture? All nature? What do you think?
Combination.
Combination, to some varying degree. Good. Okay, with socialization and Piaget, he had 4 different stages. Can somebody name those? Well, just name them, and then what's the first one?
Sensory motor state.
Sensory motor is the first one.
Oh, pre-operational.
And concrete operational and formal operational.
Right, those are the 4 stages. Good. Okay, we also talked about the 4 main agents of socialization. What are they?
Family.
Family,
School.
school,
Media.
mass media,
Peers.
and peers. Good. Okay, if you remove somebody from a society and try to like reteach them norms and values, what's that called? So if somebody's really messed up, you send them to prison, you try to break down their identity and
Institutionalize. Or resocialization.
resocialization. Good. Now, what if you are learning to help yourself achieve a desired social position? What's that called? So you're hanging out with a group of people, you want to be like them, and you start to learn by engaging in behavior with them and imitating their behavior. That's called anticipatory socialization. If you had to summarize what Piaget's focus was on in one word, what would it be?
Sociology.
No. Nice try though.
Development.
That's a good argument, but that's not one of the options in the question.
What are the options in the question?
I'm not going to tell you directly. If you remember from psychology, Piaget was one of the main cognitive theorists. So he focused on thinking processes and cognition. But development was also a good option.
It's 2 words.
Okay, there are two theorists that focused on moral development, Kohlberg and Gilligan. What was some of the difference? What's the main difference in their research? They both focused on moral reasoning, but what was the main difference in their research?
Research methods.
No? Well, maybe, but it might not have been the main difference. Kohlberg focused on moral reasoning in general. Remember, he talked about different stages that people went through. He had 3 of them. Gilligan focused on boys versus girls specifically, right? So in that instance, what did she find? In terms of what boys and girls define as right or wrong, what did she find?
Isn't males like more to the rules, following the rules, and girls is more emotional and sport?
Right. The boys were very concerned with the rules. Girls were more concerned with like unity and making people happy. Okay. In terms of socialization, to produce a happy, well-adjusted child, what social institution plays the biggest role?
Parents.
Yeah, the family. Yep. So you can have like a perfect school system, a lot of income, be healthy, have good friends, and if your family's messed up, that's the thing that's the most, that plays the biggest role in having you learn. I totally messed up how I was trying to say that, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'll move on then. Give me an example of a total institution.
School.
Nice try.
Jail.
Yeah, prison.
Mental rehabilitation center.
Yeah, mental rehabilitation center. Inpatient drug treatment where you have to stay there, right?
Sure has.
Okay, good. Okay, at any given time you occupy a number of statuses. You hold a number of different statuses. What's that called?
Status set.
Status set. So what would like some of my status set be?
Husband.
Father.
Father, teacher, husband,
Brother.
brother, son.
You have
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah, the older you get, the more you pick up.
Softball
So.
player.
Yeah,
Love
not for like 4 weeks because
Oh,
of my
yeah.
stupid oblique. So, kind of annoying. Okay, I will read you one question from the test because if you get this question wrong, I will just cry. Okay?
We'll cry, okay.
All right?
I'm gonna get it wrong now, just to make you cry.
Just to make me cry. Okay, go ahead. According to research, what percentage of people experience role strain at some point in their life?
100%.
100%, which is almost like what percentage of people have
Describe status of either son or daughter. It's
Right.
100%. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
That's-
Don't worry about it. You got it.
Okay,
Hey, we're
good.
actually helping
What
people
about transgenders?
review for the final.
At some
We
point.
should got 4 points.
Then they have both.
Okay, next one. What is a status that you earn?
Achieved.
Achieved. One that's given to you at birth or involuntarily. Ascribed. Okay.
Everybody has that.
What's the status that plays the biggest role in shaping your behavior?
Ascribed.
No.
Achieved.
No.
Oh,
What?
oh.
What's the term for the status?
Master
that
status.
Master status. Good. Okay.
That one.
Okay, so what's the difference between a status and a role then?
Status is something like,
Roles is like how you act or like what you
With
do
that
with
status.
that
what society
status.
expects you to do.
Right.
with
A
status.
status is a social position you hold, teacher, husband, father, etc. A role is the expected behavior that goes with that status. So in some societies, a teacher's status is going to be different, or excuse me, a teacher's role is going to be different than a teacher in another society. Or even in some societies, as society changes, the roles change as well. So in the 50s or 60s, teachers were thought at least much more than today to be like enforcers. So in the hall, if there was a kid walking around and he shouldn't be in the hall, in the 50s, and some teacher walked up to that kid and said, "Hey, where are you supposed to be?" and the kid mouthed off to the teacher, the teacher was the enforcer, right? Now, they don't do that. Nobody would be in the hall then. You're just randomly sitting in class. Where are you supposed to be? Bang! You hear a gunshot. What's going on? Oh, somebody was in the hall again.
Somebody was out of hall when they should have been.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Let's say that Kaylee smiles at Jacob because she thinks that they're friends. Jacob thinks that that is a sign that Kaylee is interested in him, and decides to ask Jacob, or decides to ask Kaylee to go to prom. Excuse me, I'm laughing at that question. Which theory would help us to understand this?
Social interaction.
Symbolic interaction.
That's what I mean.
Okay, why?
Because it deals with the.
How he perceived her smile, and
Right.
how she
Intended it.
yes
Exactly. Good.
rocked it.
Okay.
Every time I do Robertson.
What's the term for the study of social interaction that tries to analyze it as like a performance? Like you're acting. Like you're actors.
Because it's got like backstage or something.
Right? Front stage, backstage, and off stage.
Oh,
Remember?
Demography?
No,
No,
it starts with a D
that's-
though.
Demography is what we just did.
I know.
Has the same number of syllables too.
Okay.
That's not help.
It's called dramaturgy.
Dramaturgy. Drama. Remember drama.
Got it.
Okay.
Connection page.
So in dramaturgy, there's this concept called presentation of self. This also is an aspect of SI theory. But what does that talk about?
Costumes. And how you present
Well,
yourself,
yeah.
how you think that you should act in front of the stage.
Right. It's you interpret the roles and the statuses that you're supposed to perform, or excuse me, the roles you're supposed to perform based on the status you hold. So then you're going to change maybe how you present yourself in different social situations. So let's say, for example, I knew for a fact that the president was going to be in my class today. Would I go to school dressed like this?
No.
No.
Well, it is a lot.
Well, I do have the
It is
American
new
flag.
New shoes, new pants.
That's true.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe to show off.
But I probably wear a long sleeve dress shirt with my American flag tie, right? So,
It's so patriotic.
something. Right. But now let's say, it's payday Friday, the last Friday of the school year. T-shirt, jeans you can always wear on payday Friday, right? But if I knew for a fact, like somebody significant was coming in to observe or hang out, I'd probably dress differently, right? So, well, yeah, you guys are significant. I mean, like a senator or something. Okay? You guys
Guess
get
we're
what I'm
not
trying to
good
say.
enough. We're not good enough.
Okay.
We're not good.
What is the key to understanding a joke?
To know that
Understanding the separation of reality.
Yeah, understanding the two different realities that are being presented. Yeah, so the example that I told you guys about briefly from in period 2, I didn't mention this in period 7 because I wanted to kind of keep it quiet because I was embarrassed. And probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever said, it was an accident. But when when I was talking about how there were big things in a place, and I had something written on the board, and I was just, see, they don't get the joke at all right now, because they don't understand the two different realities, but everybody else is like laughing and giggling, so.
Just you in here.
Yeah, I just.
Everyone else here is period 2,
Tell me
so.
what-
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you are period 2. Okay, so Jennifer doesn't get the joke, because I'll explain it after, because I don't want to leave any video evidence.
Okay.
So, but it was, I was very embarrassed.
Say the word out
So,
loud then.
no. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh,
There is research involving a guy that tried to figure out if people would conform to their friends. What did he do? Or what was one of those studies that talked about conforming to your friends, even if you believe they were wrong?
Is that the
Groupthink.
jail thing where they?
Do you want the name of the study, or do you want like just to describe?
Well, not groupthink necessarily.
The
No.
line?
The line study. Okay. So what happened in the line
They
study?
put 3 lines on the board, and they asked like 4 students to leave, and then they told everyone in class, raise their hand when I point to this line, no matter what. And it wasn't the shortest or longest line or whatever. And then they came in and said, which line's the longest? And they pointed to like the shortest one. Everybody in the class would raise their hand, except for the 4, and then they would usually slowly raise their hands because they didn't want to be left out or look stupid.
Right. So everybody in the room was in on the study except for who was being studied, and they wanted to see if they would conform. So let's say I had 3 lines written on the board, and they were all clearly different lengths, and I asked Kaylee to say which one matches the line that's on this side of the board, right? The other 3 are over there, and then there's one over here. And it's big enough difference that you can clearly tell. Everybody else says, oh, it's A, but in reality it's B. Is Kaylee going to say what everybody else says just to fit in, or is she going to stick to her guns and say what she thinks is right?
She usually say it was
So, we'll say, I think she's stubborn enough that she would say.
She would stick with her own.
Yeah, I agree. But,
I mean,
okay, in terms of leadership focus, men and women. Women tend to have what type of leadership? Men tend to have what type of leadership in organizations?
Men have.
They want to get stuff done,
Yep.
instrumental,
Yeah, instrumental.
and then women are more concerned with team building,
Emotional.
expressive.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, what does the principle of McDonaldization of society refer to?
McDonaldization of society.
McDonaldization of society.
The growing organization of society.
No, not necessarily.
is that how they work, like how things work?
The
Effectively?
specialization. Like everybody becoming specialized in certain areas and stuff like that.
Yeah, they want efficiency, that's the focus. Exactly, good. Okay, 2 or more people who identify and interact with each other would be called a
Group.
social group. Let's see. Some of these are hard to reword on the fly.
Then don't reword them.
Well, no, I am rewording them.
I know you are, but you can stop.
What's the difference between a primary group and a secondary group?
Primary
The
is
second one comes second.
primary is like the people you share everything with and the ones you're
Lasting
closer to.
friendships.
And this secondary is like for it to get
goal
tasks, tasks accomplished.
Right, so if you're in a primary group, that's like your family or your really close friends. Secondary group is your coworkers, maybe people on a team with you. But if you interact with them long enough, that can become a primary group to you also. Good. Okay, breasts in females and deeper voices in males are examples of
Gender.
Can you say that again?
breasts in females and deeper voices in males are examples of what?
Oh, it's sex.
Gender traits.
Yeah. No, it'd be secondary sex characteristics.
Oh, well.
Right. Primary sex characteristics are what then?
Penises and vaginas.
Very good, Menzel. Roosevelt. He's like the kid. As soon as I started to say that question, I was like, oh no. But he's like the kid from Kindergarten Cop.
We're all adults.
I know.
Yep.
Well,
I'm not an adult.
I am.
I'm legally an adult.
You should all act like
mentally
adults.
not one, or?
Depends on the day.
How much money, remember when we talked about how much money was spent on stuff in the United States with like sexuality?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So how much did they spend on pornography? Do you remember?
Like
Billion?
54?
Too much.
That was worldwide. 54 billion, I think, was the
Exactly,
number
too much.
worldwide. In the US, it was like, how much? Was it 100 million? A billion?
Just say
Over
it.
10 billion? What do you
Over
think?
10 billion.
It was over 10 billion, yeah. Okay,
Do that
what
question.
do you say?
So do that question.
Do what question?
That one right there.
I don't think
That's
so.
the point. He's trying to confuse you.
Right.
That's an example of social.
Okay. In the past, if you were a kid that was just really hyper, they viewed you as like needing punishment to control you. Now you have ADD or ADHD. What does that demonstrate?
Medicalization of deviance.
Yeah, medicalization of deviance. Good.
I don't know.
We talked about the 4 justifications for punishment. What are the 4 justifications for punishment?
Deterrence. Deterrence.
Deterrence is one.
Retribution.
Retribution. Very good.
Rehabilitation.
Social protection.
Rehabilitation and societal protection. Good. So, Kaylee's a murderer. We're going to punish her so that if
I never-
Mitzel's thinking of killing somebody, he's like, holy crap, they executed Kaylee, I don't want that to happen to me. What justification for punishment is that fitting?
Deterrence.
Deterrence. Okay. Kaylee's a murderer. We want to execute her so that she doesn't harm anybody else.
Social
What?
protection.
Societal protection.
Societal protection.
Okay. Kaylee's a murderer. We want to kill her so that her family gets some type of justice. That's what?
Retribution.
Retribution.
Not
Kaylee's a murderer. We want to send her to prison for a while so that she feels bad, and when she comes out, she won't kill anybody else.
Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation. Good. Okay.
Violent person.
Stop killing people.
An SI analysis of deviance and conformity, which shows how deviance is mostly tied to how others respond to an individual's interaction.
That's the methodology.
No, but it's related to that.
Tyler Ostern and Michael Knudsen to the office, please. Tyler Ostern and Michael Knudsen, please come to the office.
So if I'm like, that's deviant, but somebody else is like, no, it's not. So let's say, go to,
Softball players, please report to the gymnasium today for practice.
Let's say-
Varsity softball players, you are to report to the gym for practice today.
let's say you were go down to like Vegas, right?
Yes.
And just the wildest place you can think of in Vegas. And then you decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the smallest town I can find in North Dakota and act like that with like 50 of my friends. And in that small town that has one bar, we're all going to just go crazy.
Okay.
Okay? In Vegas, that's almost considered normal. People go to Vegas to act that ridiculous, right? You go to a small town, you do that, everybody's going to be thinking, holy cow, these people are nuts. So how people identify you in that situation is determining what's deviant or not, right?
Yes.
So, what's the theory that talks about that?
SI.
You guys don't. Well, SI, that's true. But labeling theory. It'd be labeling theory. Okay, next one. If I'm like, if society attaches a label to you that really affects your identity,
Let's see.
what's that called?
Really affects
So,
everything?
yeah, so, like Elijah, he gets picked on a lot and everybody starts to call him like,
Stigma.
oh, okay, it's a stigma. Yeah, good. Elijah, you're safe for now.
What is this thing?
It's the thing that happens to your eyes.
Okay.
You can't see, right?
Let's say that you. I'm trying. That one's really hard to. Oh, I'm not going to explain this, but there's a few questions on. Remember, we talked about ritualism, rebellion, retreatism, and innovation. There are ways to accomplish goals. So, like, if you agree with a societal goal, but you don't agree with the methods, remember that? There's a little box for it. There's a few questions on that. I'm not going to take time to explain it because it'd be too hard to reword.
Okay.
Okay? What's the concept for how...
Messages, please see Mr. Clark
I'll
for
turn it down.
some certificates. Jesse Brown, Stephen Burdick, Kate Down, Austin Dillard,
What do you want it to?
1.
Samantha Gunny,
Thank you. Okay. In society, the ranking of people in society, what's that called? Might be based on money, it might be based on social position. No, in general, not specific.
Stratification.
Social stratification. Yep. So now, if you have a system where it's based on ascription and achievement, what's that called? No. No. Just a class system. If it's based just on achievement, what is it? Meritocracy. If it's based just on ascription, what is it?
A caste system.
A caste system. Good. Okay, give me an example of a blue-collar worker.
Factory worker.
Construction, truck driver, etc. Okay, give me an example of a white-collar worker.
Secretary.
No, secretary wouldn't be white-collar.
A white
Con
collar
artist.
would be.
A what?
Con artist.
No.
Doctor, lawyer.
White-collar. That's white-collar crime.
Oh, yeah.
Doctor,
So-
lawyer.
Doctor, lawyer, teacher, manager. Okay, give me an example of
Mailman.
pink color.
Nurse. Secretary.
Nurse, secretary. Good. Okay, what's the difference between absolute and relative poverty?
Absolute is that your life is threatened, and like relative is compared to like other people around you, you're not.
You still have good.
Right. So if Jennifer, I'll pick on you again today. Let's say that Jennifer doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have a car, lives in a small apartment, but still has enough food, still has heat, still has electricity. What is she experiencing? Relative poverty. Okay. Now let's say Jennifer's in Africa, like not knowing when she's going to eat next. What's she experiencing? Absolute poverty. Okay. There's a theory that talks about how the greater the importance of position in society is, the more reward society attaches to it. What's that called? It's named after two researchers. The more importance position is in society, the more rewards people attach to it.
Is it that one with the hyphen in the middle?
Yep. It's the Davis-Moore thesis. Okay, no, I'm going to start just kind of, if it's pretty straightforward, I'm just going to kind of tell you what to know. High income versus low income nations and where they're located. Dependency theory and modernization theory. Neocolonialism. Rich and poor nations, like the difference over time between the two. Male and female performance on aptitude tests. Patriarchy and matriarchy. Gender roles versus sexual orientation. U.S. labor force. All this is on the study guide too. But, I mean, I can keep going over if you guys have time, or do you?
I don't
I
know.
have family
Really
time, I
good
gotta
time.
go.
Okay, so I'll just keep doing this then. Is that okay?
Yeah, and we'll just watch the rest of the video.
Right. Well, I'm not gonna go over any more questions then if everybody leaves, right?
Okay, well then, yeah, just keep going.
Like I'm doing now.
Yes.
Okay. Occupations that have a lot of male and female workers in them. Main ethnic groups in the United States. Types of segregation and discrimination, whether it just exists normally or whether it's in fact, or whether it's by law. The difference between prejudice, bias, stereotype, and discrimination. Affirmative action. Scapegoat theory. Genocide. Capitalism versus socialism. Monopolies. Social institutions, like types of major social institutions, so religion, government, politics, etc. Welfare capitalism, primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors of the economy, fundamentalism and civil religion, types of authority, polygamy and monogamy, religious rituals, education versus schooling, tracking, HMOs, healthcare in the U.S., demography, manifest functions and latent functions of immigration, age-sex pyramids, Gemeinschaft, Gesellschaft, and mechanical and organic solidarity.
What was that last one, mechanical and what?
Organic. Types of social movements. Let's see.
That's it. That's all crazy one.
Yeah, that's it.
Red button to stop?
What was the other?
Red button to stop?
I think so.
Funny thing.
Or actually, there's a square button.
Properly.